To thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park, the championship meet, running now through Florida Derby weekend, March 31st.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I am Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Coming up a little bit later on, we'll be joined by Pat McKenna from the New York Racing Association. Get a little update on Belmont Park and what's going on down there. The renderings came out about a week ago. It looks like a nice new 21st century facility, lots of expanded green space. So looking forward to that. We'll get an update there. We'll also get an update on the Belmont at Saratoga situation, tickets and whatnot there. And also, I think the tickets for the actual Saratoga season are the official Saratoga season are going to come out soon. So we'll get an update from Pat on that as well. But top of the show, a little bit of a lull. We said it on the handicapping show earlier, a little bit of a lull this week on the Triple Crown Trail, which is unusual at this time of year. It seems like there's a big 3-year-old event or two every weekend. But again, a little bit of a lull. So I thought it was a good time to kind of step back and maybe just take a closer look at where we are right now on the Triple Crown Trail with the 3-year-olds, and who better to reach out to than Byron King from the Bloodhorse. He does the Derby Dozen there every week in the lead up to the Triple Crown. Byron, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. Happy to have you on board to talk a little bit about it. Before we get into the specifics, because I want to hit on some specific horses from your Derby Dozen and get your thoughts overall, but I'd love to hear your thought on the 3-year-old scene right now. I've been saying for the last few weeks, to me, it seems it's a lot like last year in that we'll get a performance and think, oh, there's the one. And then next out, they don't do anything. They just haven't been able to validate so far. So there's nobody that you can feel super comfortable latching onto. What are your kind of overall thoughts at this point on the 3-year-old scene?
I agree with you very much. I think that many of the leading contenders all have a degree of uncertainty around them. For example, Dornoch, who is my number one, his win at the Fountain of Youth was against a depleted field caused from scratches. He was pretty workmanlike, but at the same time, I do believe he is a horse that waits on horses and doesn't really extend. I think that was evident in the Remsen last year when he kind of waited, and then Thierry Leon came up and they finished strongly together and he won. And then you throw in Fierceness, who was brilliant in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but then just was highly disappointing when he was third in the Holy Bull, but come back and train great. And then you have various other question marks around some of the other horses, because they run on maybe off track, like for example, when you look at Timberlake, somebody like that. So there's a lot of question marks, and hopefully we'll start to get a little more clarity in the coming weeks. But as you noted, this is a quiet week. It's kind of this middle ground that falls in between people trying to squeeze in 2 preps and those that just want one more prep. So it's a quiet week.
Yeah, I am looking forward to kind of this last round to see if we can get 2 or 3 to kind of step it up that we can really look forward to heading into the Derby, because it's been funny so far. And let's talk about your top selection. You have Dornoch on top. And I will admit I was a little bit surprised with your top 2 because I say that as a person who I haven't put together a top 10, I'm not sure how I would sort it out. But we were down a couple of weeks ago at the Fountain of Youth covering that one. And I was standing there and watched Dornoch. And as you said, there were a couple of scratches that seemed to make it a less than compelling field. And so I wasn't sure how to come out of that with Dornoch, and we're going to watch the stretch run to the Fountain of Youth. Given the scratches, and again, that the field kind of fell apart a little bit, but he got it done. And also, I think on his side, coming into the race, I was taking a little shot against him with Locke, who again wound up scratched. But I took a shot against him because it seemed like Danny Gargan was kind of saying, this isn't really the one we're pointing for. And so I wasn't sure we'd get a best effort in the seasonal debut for Dornoch. But with the scratch-reduced field, he did what he had to do. And if the fact is he wasn't totally cranked up, he is interesting. So give us your thoughts on Dornoch.
Well, like I said, he's a tough horse to evaluate because of the scratches. I think at best you would call the horses behind them grade 3 quality at best, right? I mean, 2-3 horses in that race aren't even Triple Crown nominated. So that's not a good reflection. But, I believe you just showed the video of his stretch run, but you can see him flicking his ears a little bit. He's just a horse that just, he knows when it's a done deal and doesn't really extend himself. So I do think he's got more there. He needs to show more, though, because he can't just merely replicate that race and win the Kentucky Derby. But he obviously has all the tools in the sense that, he wins the Remsen, which has been a highly key race, besides Sierra Leone, drum roll please, came back and won. Domestic Product was, I think, seventh, won the Tampa Bay Derby. So he has beaten a good bunch. It wasn't last time out, but he has beaten a good crew. And, of course, he's got, the pedigree to win the Kentucky Derby, being a full brother to Mage. So a lot to like on that front. He's clearly, I think, a leading contender, but I am eager to see what he does in his final prep.
You totally agree. And again, as they say, Danny Gargan was kind of hinting that we're not going to be fully cranked. So that he got it done was a kind of a feather in his cap. It's going to be interesting to see his next start as well, because as they say, nobody's kind of validating, and nobody demonstrates that better than the horse you have at number 2. And I caught up with Mike Rapoli and did a quick little interview with him a couple of weeks ago at Fountain of Youth. Unfortunately, I didn't get to his table in time to talk to Tom Brady. He'd already left by then. But did talk to Mike Rapoli and asked him, what are your thoughts on Fierceness? We're going to pull up the replay to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where, again, he looked phenomenal there. He looked phenomenal right up here in our neighborhood in the career debut at Saratoga. But the Champagne and the Holy Bull, not so much. And it's hard to know what to make of him. I said to Mike Rapoli, the craziest resume you can look at. He, as you would expect, Rapoli is kind of, we're going to bounce back. Believe me, we'll bounce back in the Florida Derby. I'm totally intrigued as to what to see. A lot of people have said this is a horse who really has to have things go his own way. Can't really have a straw in his path. And my take on that is I'm not sure we've completely defined that at this point, but if that's the truth, I don't know if that bodes well for a 20-horse Derby performance. But what are your thoughts overall on Fierceness?
Well, similarly, I heard Rapoli talking about, acknowledging the fact that the horse has been inconsistent. He runs great, runs poorly. He runs great, he runs poorly. And with that pattern, he was wished the Kentucky Derby was next because to be ready for another big one. But, I mean, this horse's workout, which you can watch on XBTV or on formerly known as Twitter, I mean, he has looked sensational, just whooping up on Tuscan Sky in his last 2 works. And, I mean, if he runs to those, we're going to see the real fierceness coming back. And his win last year in Breeders' Cup Juvenile, besides being dominant and just visually appealing, it was an extremely fast race in which there were some good horses behind him. I mean, Timberlake is way back there in 4th, so he beat some good ones. I think if they all show up with their best race, he's the best horse. The question is, and as you acknowledged, he is erratic, and who are we going to see? Now, I do think you could give him excuses for his 2 poor efforts, catching an off track in the Champagne and then off a layoff and breaking a little slowly. But I hate excuses. I like those that show up no matter what happens to them. So we'll have to see what he does in the Florida Derby, but he just really has me excited by how he's training.
Yeah, as you mentioned, working well with another talented Pletcher runner who's going to be interesting to follow on the trail as well. I'm with you, and I express it to Mike Rapoli. I'm interested to see what he does in the next one because it's either brilliant or not, as it were. And we'll see how he does in the Florida Derby. Also wanted some thoughts on Sierra Leone, who comes out of the win in the Risen Star. And we're going to take a look at the stretch run there. It's a Chad Brown runner. So intriguing just on that aspect. Chad Brown, chasing a Derby potentially. Comes in with a pretty good record. Won the career debut. A near miss, as we've already mentioned, behind Dornoch in that very, very productive Remsen. And then he validates that Remsen again with the win in the Risen Star. Give us your thoughts on Sierra Leone.
Well, he's impeccably bred. He cost a small fortune at auction, $2.something million. I thought the Risen Star was one of the deeper preps that we've seen this year, probably top to bottom the best of them, and he won it. Oddly enough, though, as strong as it looked on paper, it was not really fast on the clock. It was, even relative to the other times of the day, it wasn't particularly fast. Now, it wasn't off track, but that would be the one I think asterisk you would apply to it. Now, he did run down Track Phantom, who had been on a roll at the fairgrounds and had everything his own way. So there is a lot to like about this horse. They added blinkers to him in the Remsen last year. Chad Brown felt like he laid up when he and lost focus when he came to Dornoch, and so they added those. Seemed to result in a more professional finish from him. But, this is clearly a very, very good horse, and I think a lot of people have him as their number one. In fact, he might even be the morning line favorite in the future wager current one for the Kentucky Derby that's ongoing. But very, very nice horse, and I'm excited to see what he does in the Bluegrass.
Yeah, I pulled up the odds, the current odds that opened yesterday, and I'm just kind of scrolling through quickly to see. And it looks like Dornoch is actually at 5-1, and Sierra Leone is at 8-1. Well, no, let me double check that on Dornoch. Dornoch, the morning line, it was, he's 11-1. Let me just say that Dornoch's 11-1. So yeah, currently Sierra Leone is the favorite in the future pool at 8-1, and I think a lot of people, Chad Brown runner, just going to be interesting to see how he approaches the Derby and what we see next time out from that horse. So there are your 1, 2, 3. Dornoch, Fierceness, and Sierra Leone. I wanted to go down the list a little bit because there are some other intriguing runners certainly out there, and you have at number 9, Deterministic, and I think this one is intriguing. We're going to watch the stretch run going back a couple of weeks to the Gotham. Deterministic, interesting from a couple of angles. First, very lightly raced. This is start number 2 and win number 2. And the second interesting thing is Christophe Clement. So again, another name that's going to be interesting to watch potentially on the Derby trail. Give us some thoughts of the performance of Deterministic coming out of the Gotham.
Well, he was outstanding. He was coming off a layoff, going all the way back to the summer at Saratoga. They had hoped to prep him in an allowance race, but nothing quite unfolded the way that Christophe Clement wanted in terms of his return kind of spot. So they tried him in the 1 mile Gotham, and he passed it with flying colors, rated just behind the leaders, angled out in the stretch, and then when another one drifted out, he kind of darted inside and finished outstanding. So I think I have some concern about how far he might want to run because he's out of a Fightstown mare who was a turf sprinter. But at the same time, he got some stamina from his sire, Liam Smap, who was a Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile winner and won as far as 1 mile and an 8. And so I do think the 2-turn test will be key for him. But either way, whether he makes the Derby he's only going to have one 2-turn prep in him. So that is somewhat of a disadvantage when you start talking about going 1.25 miles on the first Saturday in May. But highly, highly talented.
Yeah, I mean, the game has changed, certainly since I first got into it. And horses are more lightly raced going to the Derby, but it's still hard to pull a trigger with a resume like he's going to have coming in. A little more experience, and a horse that I have mentioned over the past few weeks that I find very interesting, and the next start for me is going to be totally intriguing for Mystic Dan, who has, at this point, one of the most intriguing races of the bunch, with the Southwest win, with a triple-digit buyer. But the rest of the resume doesn't necessarily support that. It was also over and off track. We're watching the stretch run here of Mystic Dan in the Southwest. Again, I'm very, very intrigued. You have him at number 8. What are your thoughts on Mystic Dan?
You pretty much pegged it, man. This is a horse that was brilliant in this particular performance, but he rode the rail, had a great trip. Perhaps you could say like that. Obviously, Brian Hernandez rode him as if he felt like the rail was the place to be. So maybe that gave him an edge beyond liking the track, but he was sensational. I mean, his final 16th was like under 6 seconds, which is usually kind of reserved for like turf horses. But, you go back beyond that race, and the 2 other routes were a pair of fifths. So he did run fast in a maiden win at Churchill Downs in the fall, but I think he falls a little bit in the fierceness camp without the same level of accomplishment. But in terms of, we've just kind of seen all different kinds of performances from him. So it's hard to know what to expect. I would love to see him on a fast track without such a trip that's so favorable to where we can get a real bead on how good he is. I also look at him a little bit and wonder, maybe these middle distances or shorter distances might suit him better than 1.25 miles. I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking a little too much at his sire side of his pedigree. By Gold Sense, who was, of course, a brilliant dirt miler type. So I think still some question marks to answer, but no doubt, I don't think there's many horses that ran better in their last start than Mystic Dan.
Yeah, to me, he's at this point, he's the most intriguing horse. So going to be interested to see in his next start if he can, again, validate and become one of the ones we kind of concentrate on and take an extra look at. And one more I wanted to touch on your list. Again, we were down at Gulfstream a couple of weeks ago for the Fountain of Youth, but the day before, Conquest Warrior scored for Shug in a good-looking performance. I don't know whether the numbers have been stellar so far for Conquest Warrior, but certainly he's now put in a couple of nice wins, the Maiden Breaker and the Optional Claimer again a couple of weeks ago. And obviously stakes are going to have to be in the offing in the next start to get points to the Derby. Shug has been conservative so far. Your thoughts on Conquest Warrior?
Yeah, I thought it was, this was a horse that when he broke his maiden, people were like, wow, because he broke poorly, gets shut off, then he runs into some traffic problems rallying and leaving the turn and whatnot, and he still manages to prevail. It was a remarkable effort in that mile race. And then he came back and he was running, as you mentioned, Seth, the day before the Fountain of Youth. And, while it wasn't a stakes group, it was still a pretty decent group. The runner-up, who his name's escaping me, had been cross-entered in the Merit, had been cross-entered in the Fountain of Youth. So it wasn't a bad bunch, and he dusted him. Now, the figure people gave it just really essentially the same quality of performance as his maiden win. So it wasn't especially fast. But, you look at this horse, he's a pricey yearling. He's got a lovely pedigree. He's got a Hall of Fame trainer who's won the Kentucky Derby with Orb. Shug, as you mentioned, is on the conservative side. So, clearly he did not pursue a stakes race here. He wanted to kind of take things a little easy for him. And I think it's all going to boil down to, can he run 1-2 in the final prep? And if so, he's on the roll. And if not, he'll probably take an alternative route, go Peter Pan or whatever it might be. So we shall see. But I think he's a very, very nice horse.
Yeah, as I say, the race we saw a couple of weeks ago certainly was good looking. As I say, the number may be a little bit light, but he is still lightly raced with some upside potential. I wanted to touch on a couple others that I find interesting as well. And one that might float under people's radar, although I say that, and as you were talking, just check the odds, the Derby Future Pool, 14-1 on Forever Young. But Forever Young is a Japanese runner, undefeated at this point in the career, including the Saudi Derby last time out. And given what the Japanese have done over the past, 2 or 3 years, popping out to big international events, it wouldn't shock me if a Japanese runner played an important role maybe in the Kentucky Derby sooner rather than later. What are your thoughts on Forever Young?
I think he is highly legit. I think when I watched his race in the Saudi Derby, it was a one-turn mile. I really thought he was in deep trouble early in the race. The jockey was having to ride him a little bit, and it just looked like he was just having to work for every single yard trying to gain on the leaders. But by the time they hit the stretch, he got into gear. He did not switch leads, but he was still relentless in his flows and won by a nose, beating a nice horse who's not a Triple Crown nom, but, Bookham Dano is a quality sprinter miler type. So he beat a nice horse, and the time was really fast. I'm not sure how much stock we can put in, times from Saudi Arabia in terms of speed figures and that kind of stuff. But if you just looked at the time of the race relative to past running, it was much, much faster, even taking into account the fact that the track was playing quick. So he's a very nice horse. We'll see him in the UAE Derby next, a longer distance, which one would think would be right up his alley. And I would think that if he runs 1-2, he'll be on his way to Louisville. But he's unbeaten 4 starts, and, I think every bit as strong a contender from Japan than we've seen through the years. So, obviously, Dermot Sotogake didn't run a bad race last year and turned out to be a pretty nice horse. So, I think this guy's every bit as good as him.
It's hard to argue what we've seen so far, and he would add some nice international intrigue to the Derby. And finally, I wanted some thoughts on Timberlake, because I think a lot of people interested in him, and just 12-1 currently in the future pool. No surprise there. It's Brad Cox, and certainly impressed in the 3-year-old debut, the Rebel down at Oaklawn. Your thoughts on Timberlake?
Yeah, he's a horse that I thought last year kind of made some trouble for himself. He would be too keen. He ran, he was very keen in the Hopeful last year when he was second, and then in some of his other races, even after they made an equipment change, he would still tug pretty hard. But in the Rebel, he settled kindly. He put himself in a good spot, and he overwhelmed the competition. And I think that will be key for him if he is to be successful in these longer mile-and-a-half, mile-and-a-quarter kind of races, to where he's not fighting his rider and he's responsive when he asks them. Now, I don't think the Rebel was a sensational renewal this year. There weren't any shippers from Bob Baffert's stable that were there. So he took on a fairly average group, I would say. So he still has more to answer, but I think, in the Arkansas Derby, which I saw Elliott Weldon from Windstar Farm announce since his next start, will be quite telling. But I think in anybody's book, this horse is one of the top 5 or 6 3-year-olds in the country.
And there's a list that we're all included on your Derby Dozen, and folks can find that again at the Bloodhorse. What day of the week does that typically come out?
That comes out on Tuesdays, usually about midday. It's the written version, and also at that time I usually have a video as well, in which I kind of review the preps from the past weekend, which we won't have this upcoming week, obviously, without it. But we'll probably take a look at some of the workouts from, Fierceness and some of the other horses as well.
Very good. So people can check that again, Bloodhorse. And just before we let you go, any thoughts on this weekend's future pool? I'm just kind of scrolling through. First of all, even as we're getting close, I still want 25 or 30 to 1 that your horse is just going to make the gate. And so some of these shorter prices that we've talked about, Sierra Leone at 8 to 1, Timberlake at 12 to 1, don't really get my juices flowing. I will say at 14 to 1, all others is intriguing because I still think you may get a few in there, even at this late date. And if you do, they will be horses who have shown a little something in the last month and a half before the Derby. So at the current 14 to 1, all others is intriguing to me. But Tuscan Sky, we've mentioned him, 34 to 1 is an interesting price, 25 to 1 on Track Phantom. As I scroll up the list, No More Time is at 99 to 1. Liberal Arts at 49 to 1, a little bit interesting, perhaps. Anything clever in the future pool?
Well, I think obviously this early, and I forget when the exact closing time is on this, but, I'm not sure how much is in the pool to where we could have some pretty significant swings before it closes. But as I'm looking at it right now, Seth, Catching Freedom, third in the Risen Star, 38 to 1. That's pretty strong. I like that. That looks nice. So I think to me, he's one of them that is intriguing. He's supposed to enter the Louisiana Derby where they take entries later today. I kind of like him at that number.
Yeah, as you mentioned it, I'm looking. I would totally agree. Brad Cox runner with a little bit of something at 38. As I say, I like even at this point, 25, 30 to 1 or higher. Byron, really appreciate the visit this morning. Again, tell people to catch not just the Derby Dozen, but obviously your work overall at the Bloodhorse, and we'll talk again.
All right, Seth, have a great one.
Appreciate it. Byron King, again, Derby Dozen with a kind of a lull in the 3-year-old scene this week. A good time just to step back and kind of catch up with where we stand with about a month and a half to go. And last set of preps coming up for folks. So I thought it was a good time to kind of reach out and get kind of the reset, as it were. And we'll see if some of these horses can come up in these last races, validate. So again, it'd be fun to have 2 or 3 at least that we can kind of like, oh, okay, we're kind of, and then have another 1 or 2 that are kind of on the outside that you can play around with as well. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, as mentioned earlier, Pat McKenna from the New York Racing Association will join us. We'll get a little update on the situation with the renovations, the rebuild at Belmont Park, and an update as well, Belmont at Saratoga. All of that right after this. Stay tuned.
And they're off in the Pegasus World Cup. They're off in the Fountain of Youth Stakes. And they're off in the Curlin Florida Derby. Forte wins. White Arboreal almost home.
And Nyquist is still unbeaten. Orb and John Velasquez have won the Florida Derby.
Barbaro wins.
And there you have it. Northern Dancer will be the winner of the Florida Derby.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised before the break, joined now by Pat McKenna from the New York Racing Association. Get a little update on progress and future plans at Belmont Park. The renderings came out a couple weeks ago and looked very exciting. We'll also get a little update on Belmont at Saratoga. Hey, Pat, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Thanks for having me. I'm
happy to have you. And as I say, it was a couple of weeks ago that the renderings came out. We'd all been waiting for them. It looks like a new and exciting Belmont Park with a smaller footprint, expanded green space, but I'm anticipating 21st century amenities for racing fans. Talk a little bit about the renderings that came out and the new Belmont Park we're all looking forward to.
Yeah, it was a long time coming, and because of some of the statutory requirements that are in place because of this $455 million loan from New York State, took a little bit longer to get those renderings out than maybe we had first anticipated, but in the end, really exciting day. It was great to see the governor announce and provide those renderings herself. New York State leads the way when it comes to supporting thoroughbred horse racing anywhere in America. So as we all saw, this is a very modern building that will be a significant departure from the Belmont Park that we're all accustomed to. But at the same time, by reducing the size of the building significantly, that will open up an enormous amount of green space. So this will be a property that can flex up, well in excess of 50,000 when that's necessary for the Belmont Stakes or a Breeders' Cup when we enter the rotation again. But this is also going to be, and part of what might have been lost a little bit just because that building, I think when you see it for the first time, we can all be, it is obviously a very modern design. That sweeping canopy roof, we think, will be an iconic feature in the landscape of not only racing, but sports in North America. To be able to open up the infield, to have that as a community amenity, Dave O'Rourke and the NYRA leadership are committed to providing green space year round and hopefully free of charge. So this is going to be a property that is completely different than the Belmont Park that has grown up and been around since 1968. At the same time, we want to honor the history and traditions of a facility that has hosted some of the most important sporting events in our country's history. No more important than Secretariat, but obviously you think about American Pharoah in 2015 ending that drought and the feeling in that facility like no other. So this is really exciting, and it also means a really bright future for New York racing in general. When this building is complete, we'll be able to consolidate all racing and training at one downstate world-class facility. We'll be exiting Aqueduct, which will be a sad day. We love Aqueduct. There is always this misconception out there that we are somehow down on Aqueduct at NYRA. We're not. Aqueduct has played an incredibly important role in the landscape of New York racing for decades. It's our year-round home, and frankly, without Aqueduct, we may not be able to embark on this transformation of Belmont Park. Two beautiful turf courses, a main track that is as consistent as any in the country. So that will be a sad day. But at the same time, the sport is evolving, and to have two racetracks within 8 miles of one another no longer makes sense, especially when we're fortunate enough to be reimagining Belmont Park for the decades to come. It's going to be a huge source of jobs and economic impact. You've heard me talk about that before. And that is why, again, to bring it back to New York State, that's why our leadership in New York State recognizes the importance of horse racing. It's jobs, it's economic opportunity for countless families, not only in and around Belmont Park or Saratoga, but throughout the state.
Yeah, I mean, the economic impact studies that have been done on horse racing certainly bear that out, no question about it. And as you say, this project itself going to have a big economic impact as well. Also, from my reading and looking at the facility, a modern facility, but you seem to have reached out to to the proper folks to put together the plan and the renderings and the architecture, as they have had plenty of experience making these kind of modern facilities around the world, correct?
And yeah, exactly. And you're referencing Populous, which is a unique business in that they focus almost exclusively on sporting venues. So most of the ballparks, arenas, and stadiums that have been built in the United States in the last 10 years, Populous had a significant part in. They have been the architect for Churchill Downs. They are the designer and architect for the new Keeneland expansion that they are undertaking now. So there is certainly no design architecture firm in the country, if not the world, that is as deeply experienced with creating iconic sports venues. And also credit to Mark Holliday, the NYRA board chair. He is a builder. That is his career. He's built skyscrapers in Midtown Manhattan, most recently one Vanderbilt just in the shadow of Grand Central. So to have those kinds of resources has been incredibly important now and as we get into the crux of the project.
And a couple of minutes ago, we looked at the rendering of the horses going down the stretch in the front of the facility. I think we also have a rendering of the paddock area. Again, the footprint will be a little bit reduced, but there'll be expanded green space. Does that mean this? I may be overstating this, but a Saratoga-like backyard? I mean, will there be backyard facilities out there at the new Belmont?
We hope so. I mean, again, NYRA is fortunate to be able to act as the steward for Saratoga, and that's a property that functions as well as any in the sport, obviously for those of us who are lucky enough to spend our summers up there. But really, that's because of the backyard, to be able to gather with friends and family at a picnic table at a really affordable rate. And that's, I know, what Dave O'Rourke, the NYRA CEO, has been after. I mean, you walk around the Belmont Park property on a warm spring summer day, and where do you want to be? You want to be outside. So by reducing the building from roughly 1.2 million square feet to 275,000 square feet, it's going to open up a tremendous amount of park space, as I said. And where Belmont Park is located in Nassau County, they're lacking in open green space. If you were to zoom out and look at Belmont Park from above, you'd see little tracts of green, and almost invariably those are private golf courses. So to be able to, again, offer a community amenity moving forward to really incorporate Belmont into Elmont Floral Park, Garden City, in a similar way, as you said, that Saratoga is so seamlessly interwoven within the community.
And again, the renderings look like it's going to be a really exciting, 21st century facility, which you have to have now for sports fans to provide all the amenities. But let's go over to the other side of the fence. You've already talked a little bit about infield and whatnot. Update us on the tunnel. That construction has been going on for a while, and that's why we've had the Aqueduct Saratoga schedule over the past year or so. So how's the tunnel going? And also the new Belmont Park, am I correct? There'll be a synthetic version?
Yes, that's correct. So we've been working on those infield projects for the better part of a year. Both turf courses are now up. The main track is now up. The synthetic, which will be the fourth surface. So we're installing a 1 mile synthetic oval that will be on the interior of those other three to complement the 2 turf courses and main dirt track, which will remain at 1.5 miles. So that synthetic will provide a ton of optionality for both live racing and then also training in off conditions. We saw it this summer and into the fall at Aqueduct when we come off the turf as frequently as we've been forced to these last few years. And, we can't predict the future, obviously, when it comes to weather, but we're on the front lines of seeing these really extreme rain events that are dumping 2-3 inches of rain in a few hours. And that has an impact on both the dirt surface and obviously the turf. So to be able to utilize a 1 mile oval for training is going to be important, we think, and also for winter racing. So the variety of those projects are nearing completion. Not necessarily, obviously, the turf or the main track itself, but you're looking at, potentially next fall for some of those surfaces to be laid down. The tunnels are nearly complete. There is a tunnel from the north lot into the infield, from the infield to the front side, which will become the pedestrian tunnel, and then another tunnel so that horses can access the interior synthetic surface when the facility is complete. So those are all coming along well. And, we're in the process of abating the building, which will lead to the eventual demolition here sometime in the month of April, most likely that'll get going.
Yeah, and the synthetic option is a handicapper. I like that. Off the turf races tend to hold together, and the turf horses tend to run similarly on synthetic. So I like that option for turf races that may have to, because of weather, be moved off. Just, give us a little time.
And we also, Seth, if you don't mind, I'll just stop you there. NYRA recognizes that is a significant change. We do not take these decisions or make these decisions lightly in any way, shape, or form. We have been studying synthetic surfaces for the better part of a decade as those have evolved and changed. And to be able to have all three options, especially at a facility, remember, that will be hosting live racing from September through the middle of July and the entire winter, we think will be really beneficial for horsemen, for horse players, and for everyone that's interested in the game.
Yeah, I agree. And update us on the timetable. It sounds like you're aiming for 2026, fall of 2026, but it sounds like you hope to have maybe a short Belmont Stakes Festival there in 2026 as well. So up until then, we'll be Aqueduct or Saratoga until 2026.
You got it. Yep. And we're optimistic that we could run the 2026 Belmont Stakes on the normal timeline in the month of June at a Belmont Park, probably without the benefit of having the building completely done. So we're looking at fall of 2026 to open up the building in its entirety. And hopefully that may pave the way for a Breeders' Cup later in 2026.
Nice, because I know that is on the agenda as well. And we'd love to see the Breeders' Cup come back to New York. So looking forward to it. And we certainly want to get down for a visit as soon as it's open and maybe do a little broadcast from down there. So we're looking forward to the new Belmont Park. But I can, and being from this area, I'm sure you're aware, and you've been up here over the past few months for various things. So I'm sure you're aware of this. But excitement level for Belmont at Saratoga is at 11 on a scale of 10. So just kind of update us as far as the Belmont Stakes Festival at Saratoga. Where are we at this point as far as available tickets and whatnot?
Yep, and you're right. I was up in Saratoga just a few weeks ago. I'll be up there again this week, and I can't tell you how many people I overheard talking about the Belmont at Saratoga, tickets, and all sorts of things. So it's really just a really great atmosphere always, but I think this has really galvanized the attention and the imagination of everyone in upstate New York, and obviously everyone in Saratoga. Tickets are still available for Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Very limited hospitality on Friday, which is actually looking like almost like a Travers Day with 3 grade ones, big and enthusiastic crowd. That Thursday and Sunday, especially Thursday, personally, I think the atmosphere opening up a festival, a historic event that has never been held at Saratoga, will be really interesting and fun. So Belmont Day itself is sold out in record time. That's an event that ordinarily doesn't sell out. So the fact that it essentially sold out in a day was pretty remarkable, and a testament to the passion of racing fans and everyone that frankly understands the magic of Saratoga. So, yep, BelmontStakes.com. Tickets certainly available Thursday and Sunday. And it should be really fun. We're obviously well underway in terms of all the various preparations, the stake schedule, all that information is available at BelmontStakes.com.
And as I say, just walking around town, and I play some old man basketball at the Y in one of the middle schools, and the basketball players are all asking, and everybody is ready for it, certainly. And a couple of weeks ago, we were down at Gulfstream covering the Fountain of Youth. And so as I was interviewing people, the last question I asked a lot of the familiar connections from New York trainers and owners were, are you excited? And they're all over the moon as well. So I think it's going to be a fun 4 days up here in Saratoga. Oh, and I'll let you tout, because you said you were up here a couple weeks ago. I assume that was for the job fair, which sounds like it went very well. But for folks who might be interested, are there still jobs potentially available during the 4 days?
I actually just found out yesterday that we will not be holding an additional job fair. That's how well received
nice.
That event was, which is great. I do believe there are still some opportunities. I'd have to get back to you on that, Seth. Maybe I can get you a link and you can post it through Twitter.
Sure. I thought there was an extra one. That's why I brought it up, but that's great, because I did read that first job fair, as I say, went very, very well. So that's good to hear. And just before and there are some of those. I mean, obviously it's anecdotal, but I go back to the more than 40,000 people who signed up for the pre-sale as obviously sort of direct evidence of the enthusiasm. I walked out of the 1863 Club probably half an hour before the job fair was scheduled to start, and there had to be 150 people in line. I mean, people just really, really want to be a part of it, and that includes working the event. Yeah, because you're there for the 4 days. You're part of the party, as it were. And Pat, before I let you go, Belmont at Saratoga obviously is going to generate a lot of excitement, but the Saratoga season overall always generates plenty of excitement as well. And I believe Saratoga season tickets, are they available now or shortly?
This week, those will be available. So both season passes and seasonal tickets. So we actually went out with an announcement, I want to say about a week ago, that has a rundown of all of the dates when the various areas become available. It's a little complicated. Again, I'd send folks to NYRA.com /Saratoga. We now have the benefit of having so many different hospitality areas. But at the same time, from a sales perspective, they need to put those on sale on individual days. So, it should be a great summer. We're looking forward to the Belmont and then transitioning back down to Aqueduct, which will be unusual, but back up to Saratoga, opening up July 11th. And we're thrilled about it.
Yeah, but as is everyone up here, as they say, excitement level has been high for a few months now. Pat, appreciate the update. Again, looking forward to the new Belmont Park, and really looking forward to Belmont at Saratoga, and really just a couple of months now. Looking forward to it. Appreciate you taking the time this morning, and we'll talk again.
Thanks so much, Seth.
Appreciate it. Pat McKenna from the New York Racing Association. Again, looks like a really nice updated facility down in New York with Belmont Park. And again, wanted to get a little update on the ticket situation. Belmont at Saratoga. Sounds like you still have opportunities Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. So go to NYRA.com for more info. All right, I'll take a quick break. When I come back, I'll wrap it up for this Saturday morning. Stay tuned. Haven't signed up for a Capital OTB account yet? Now's the time to take advantage of the sign-up bonus. Open up a new account with $200 or more, bet $400 by the end of the month, and receive a bonus $200 into your account. Plus, you can take advantage of everything an OTB account has to offer. Wagering from any device, live streaming, racing info, past performances, online promotions, and more. Sign up today and take advantage of the new account bonus. Details at capitalotb.com.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now. Welcome back to Racing Across America. Just a couple of minutes here to wrap it up. Again, a reminder, we talked a little bit at the top about the Kentucky Derby future pool, but there's also an Oaks pool this week. If you go to the Kentucky Derby website, I think it's just KentuckyDerby.com. I have it pulled up here. KentuckyDerby.com. And then one of the drop-down menus on top, I think you go to racing, there's a drop-down menu, and you'll see future wager. Click on that. And it brings up info for both the Kentucky Derby future pool this weekend and the Kentucky Oaks pool. And you can also get free pass performances for both as well. And just, again, I mentioned earlier some of the prices, and I'll just go through some of the interesting prices again in the future pool. And I think I'm assuming, as similar to the other pools, closes at, yes, it does. It closes at 6 o'clock tomorrow. So you have until 6 o'clock tomorrow to jump in. And as Byron King kind of alluded, you probably want to wait because I think most people, most weekends we have a Derby prep, so you definitely want to wait to see how that plays out. But this weekend, without any preps, you still want to wait maybe until tomorrow to see how the money shakes out in the pools. As I mentioned earlier, interesting to me, all others currently at 14-1. And I think with this pool, I don't know if that'll hold up, but I think you'll get a decent price. And again, I can see still, even with the expanded number of entries in these future pools now, I can still see winding up with a few horses with your all others play. And at 14-1, that might be interesting because, again, for somebody that's not on the list this weekend to make it to the Derby, they're going to have some kind of performance over the next month and a half. So I think you'll get a clever, interesting, small handful potentially at 14-1. But otherwise, Agate Road, who comes out of kind of that nice closing second in the Sam Davis, 59-1. BU, another Pletcher Rapoli runner who was coming off a maiden victory, good-looking maiden victory at Gulfstream, 99-1. Conquest Warriors at 16-1. Again, anything under 20-1, I'm not necessarily super excited about in this pool. Deterministic, 12-1. Domestic Product, and I'm not really going to argue because I don't know what to make of that Tampa Bay Derby. But Domestic Product was the winner of the Tampa Bay Derby for Chad and Klarovich. You have potent connections. You have the winner. It was a funny pace and whatnot. But I'll tell you what, at 35-1, Domestic Product is maybe interesting. Door Knock at 11-1, less so. El Grande O, if I could get El Grande O is 99-1. If I could get that kind of a price that he'll hit the board, I take it. I think the New York bred for Linda Rice has done very well in the career so far, hitting the board 10 of 11 times, but only 3 of those are wins. And I'm not sure this is a runner that I would want on the win end. I guess, the 99-1, you're probably getting the right price, but certainly hitting the board is potential. But being a New York bred, will they go? They have so many options with a horse like that. Fierceness is 13-1. Forever Young, the Japanese horse, is at 14-1. Hades at 12-1. Hall of Fame for Steve Asmussen becomes a little bit interesting at 29-1. Just a Touch for Brad Cox is at 32-1. So that one is intriguing. Robbie Medina has Liberal Arts at 48-1. Mystic Dan, 18-1. As I say, to me, he is definitely the intriguing horse. No More Time at 99-1. Sierra Leone at 7-1. Timberlake at 12-1. So again, there are some short prices that I wouldn't be intrigued with the logical. Track Phantom at 26 and Tuscan Sky at 34 also maybe a little bit interesting. So there's some prices there on horses that I think are intriguing and get to that 25 and above level that I would want to pull out of a pool like this. And again, all others at the 14-1 I definitely think is interesting as well. All right, and again, there is also Kentucky Oaks future pool this weekend as well. So keep both of those in mind as the weekend progresses. All right, I'm going to wrap it up, but we'll be back in, I don't know, a little over an hour or so, maybe a little more than that, given post times currently here for OTB Live for a Saturday afternoon. 1:20 post at Aqueduct, a 1:10 at Gulfstream. Tampa typically a little bit earlier. Some Oaklawn in the mix as well. So again, a little an hour and a half or so. I'll be back with OTB Live for a Saturday afternoon. I'm going to look at a little Aqueduct and a little Gulfstream. We'll also keep our eyes on what's happening out in Vegas with the National Handicapping Championship. As I said, we have Jesse Temple, who won through the tourney bets that's available on capitalotb.com. And if you haven't played in tournaments before, these contests, they're a lot of fun. And I think they can help you with your handicapping because you're looking for maybe a little extra value. And so you get clever sometimes. And I think that maybe helps your day-to-day handicapping. But you can play, again, the tourney bets contest at Capital OTB, and you're playing against just the universe of people at off-track outlets in New York. They're the ones that have the opportunity to play versus tourney bets. And as I say, Jesse got his seat to Vegas via that route. So keep that in mind. But there are also other online contests. And up at Saratoga, you have the low rollers. I tout that all the time. It's a lot of fun, and you can win a little extra money. And the people who walk up to me during the season and say, I heard you talk about it. I tried it. It's great. The feedback is always very positive. Online contests vary in prices. Some of them are free, but there's also $12 or $18 you can jump in, and they go up, to 100 or 200 to buy your way in or more. But you can start for a very modest amount or free, as I say, if you shop around and have some fun. But again, this afternoon, I'll also keep my eye on that leaderboard for the National Handicapping Championship and let you know if any of the local folks are making their way up on day 2. Again, Marshall Graham, who we have on the show every summer. He spends the summer up here at Saratoga, so he's kind of a local. But he had a spectacular day yesterday and led for much of the latter portion of the day. And then I think just got caught and nudged. I mean, I literally think he's a couple of dollars or maybe even cents behind the leader. And those two have a nice little gap on third. So it'll be interesting to see how Marshall continues through Saturday afternoon. Steve Bick, if you go to his website, you can actually listen to the audio portion of the proceedings as he goes through the afternoon, handicapping some races, but more importantly, sitting with some of the players who will come and sit in, and they'll handicap a little bit. Some of the best players, obviously, in the country. He's always fun to listen to as well. So you can pull that up on your computer on the side as you're watching and playing along with us this afternoon right here. But as I say, I'll keep you up to date as well with the proceedings out there. Otherwise, I think we're all caught up on everything. Thanks to Byron King and Pat McKenna for joining us this morning. Thanks to you for tuning in. I will wrap it up. Oh, one thing, we do have a knockout challenge today here at the Clubhouse Racebook. So I do want to tout that. If you'd like to come down and join us here at the Racebook this afternoon, you can have a little extra fun with the knockout challenge this afternoon. So keep that in mind. Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. And don't forget, a week from today, there is a syndicate that will be focused on Louisiana Derby Day at the fairgrounds. If you haven't tried the syndicates, you may want to jump in here. For folks who have tried them, I know you will be interested. What happens is $25 gets you in. The syndicate of folks putting in their $25 adds up to an amount. Capital OTB puts in another chunk of change, and it comes up to $750 that is played on a pick 5 on that fairgrounds card next Saturday. So for $25, you get in on a whale-sized pick 5 ticket. Game plan is to knock it out of the park there for, again, a relatively modest fee. I mention it, it's still a week away, the syndicate, but I mention it because the entries will open tomorrow at capitalotb.com. The entries will open at noontime tomorrow. Go to the promotions link at the top of the page. And then when you click on that, you will see this graphic on the page. Click on that, and there'll be an entry form. Again, tomorrow at noon, the syndicate opens up. So if you're interested, keep that in mind as well. Otherwise, I'm overtime, so I'm going to wrap it up. And as I say, be back in about an hour and a half or so for OTB Live for Sunday afternoon. Seth Merrow in the studio again. Thanks for joining us. Back for the afternoon full of action in just a few. We'll see you then. We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park, the championship meet, running now through Florida Derby weekend, March 31st.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.